So a Kahoot as a study guide, sort in a way, because study guides are very helpful, at least in my opinion, and only speaking for myself. All through elementary, middle, and high school, Kahoots were a interactive, competitive, and fun way to retain information at a very, um, advanced speed, at least for myself. I was able to learn the information and retain it much faster than if I was looking at a piece of paper or taking an exam or anything of that sort. So I created this Kahoot as a way to demonstrate that, because when I was in high school in biomedical science, we would have um, just a day before the exam, and we would do these multiple Kahoots that were accessible to us outside of the classroom up until the day of the exam, of course. And we would be able to um, practice as much as we wanted, and it was very fun. And I feel like when the students are able to have fun and they retain information much easier than if it feels forced. So let's start. What name is associated to the section labeled D? So D is on the left side of this body. So this is the left lower quadrant. What name is associated with the seventh region in this photo? So the seventh region in this photo is on the right side of the body, and so that means that this is in the hip area. The hip is also known as the iliac, so this is in the right iliac region. So what's important to know about regions and quadrants is that quadrants are a general four division way of describing where generally a pain structure or anything of that sort is, and location wise. But region is a more specific ways in order to determine location. And when you use regions, it gives the doctor a way to narrow down what specifically the diagnosis could be for the pain or anything of that sort, because they can associate what is in that region, which is smaller than the general four quadrant regions, to distinguish what the problem is. What name is associated with the fourth region in this photo? So in this region, the fourth region is on the right side of the body, and it is in the lower back area. The lower back is also known as the right lumbar. So this is the right lumbar, or the right lower back area. What name is associated with the sixth region in this photo? So in this photo, the sixth region is on the left side. It's also in the lower back region. So this is going to be the left lumbar. So it's going to be the left lower back region. Anatomy is the scientific study of the body's what? It's the scientific study of the body's structure. It is the scientific study of the body's anatomy, but you should never use the term when trying to define it. So you can't say anatomy is a scientific study of anatomy. That doesn't make any sense. What name is associated with the second region in this photo? So the second region in this photo is above the gastric area, or the umbilical region, and I always remember that because it is epigastric. Epigastric will always be above the umbilical region, above the belly button, and hypogastric will always be below the belly button. True or false? Gross anatomy is the study of larger parts of the body. This is true. Gross anatomy is the study of larger parts of the body because gross anatomy is the concepts in which you can see with the naked eye and you do not need the help or assistance of equipment. This is like bones and stuff of that sort. They're things that you can see and obviously identify what they are without the help of a microscope or, things that look more magnified in. Microanatomy is the study of concepts not verifiable to the naked eye. This is true. So microanatomy is the study of concepts like cells and such that you cannot see with your naked eye. You cannot look down at the bone and see the blastocysts, red blood cells, white blood cells. You cannot see any of those things within the bone. You only see the gross anatomy, which is the bone itself. Maybe some spongy tissue in there, some hard tissue, but you do not see the cells. And microanatomy is the study of the cells, or the things you cannot see without the help of assistants. Physiology is a scientific study of the structures of the body. This is the scientific study of the chemistry and physics of the body. You want to know why something operates, a structure of the body operates how it does, and what exactly is its in the way it functions. Excuse me. Adduction is when you put something, when you're adducting, you're adding it to your body, you're bringing it close to your body. What are the four main components required to sustain life? So the four main components required to sustain life are oxygen, nutrients, narrow range of atmospheric pressure, and of temperature. That would be the green. So in regards to this question, these are the four main components required to sustain life. They are not all the requirements to sustain life, they're just the four main components. So in regards to oxygen, oxygen is used by our cells, and in this process called cellular respiration, and it's how we get energy. And nutrients play a role in this because in the foods we eat, we convert that food into the simplest form, which is glucose, and glucose can be stored as glycogen, or glucose in the presence of oxygen is cellular respiration, which is what cells use to create energy. Also, cells need a narrow range of, well, not cells, but everything in the body needs a narrow range of temperature, because enzymes and proteins of the such, they need a very optimal and specific range of temperature in order to be able to perform at their optimal performance. And that means, like, if enzymes or proteins try to perform in a temperature that is much greater than the range that they are used to, they can just kind of disintegrate and die. They won't be able to perform, or if they can perform, they won't perform at their best rate, their optimal rate. We also need a narrow range of atmospheric pressure, because if the pressure is too high, excuse me, or too low, sometimes we cannot breathe out. Air pressure has everything to do with oxygen level. Like when you're on a mountain and the oxygen levels are low, they always tell you to be careful, don't run too much. Like if there's stairs, don't run up the stairs if you're too high up in the air. And that's because the oxygen level from the atmospheric pressure. So let's move on to question 12. The order of the levels of organization in the body goes as follows: atom, molecule, organelle, macromolecule, cell, tissue, organ, organ system, organism. And this is false. Excuse me. So this is an explanation of why it's false. So it's false because macromolecules, a lot of macromolecules make up the organelle, and a lot of organelles made up of a lot of macromolecules make up a cell, and so on. So organelles are obviously much larger than macromolecules, and an organelle is made up of macromolecules like carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. True or false? The 7 main functions of human life are organization, metabolism, responsiveness, movement, development, growth, and reproduction. This is true. This is true because organization is where we're just talking about the atom-to-atom structure, atom, molecule, macromolecule, so on, all the way to organism or atom. Metabolism can be split into catabolism or anabolism. These are two of the components that make up metabolism, and that's how things are broke down or put together, compounds and molecules in that sense. And responsiveness is all about positive feedback and negative feedback. Positive feedback is when we're gonna try to get the reaction that occurs to keep reoccurring and at a more intensity. Meanwhile, negative feedback is when we're trying to get back to homeostasis. We want to get back to a set point that was established, and no matter if we're too high, too low, we always want to get back to that set point. We also have movement. We also have development in regards to differentiation. That's when we change. We also have growth, and growth can occur in three ways. There's three main primary ways. They can increase the number of cells, increase amount of non-cellular material, or increase cell size. Reproduction is a very complex process and concept. It's about meiosis and mitosis. Meiosis is when we produce those sex gametes that are the eggs and the sperm that are there for reproduction, and mitosis is when we're going to copy and divide somatic cells. Somatic cells are body cells. Any cells in the body that are not sex cells are somatic cells. Let's move on to the next question. Question 15. True or false? Water is an essential component of both internal and external environments. This is very true. Anytime you talk to a doctor, doctors are always going to tell you water is essential. Always drink your water. Always stay hydrated. Being hydrated is very important. It's important for your internal and your external environments. So now, let's move on to question 16. Question 16, circumduction. So what is circumduction? Circumduction, when you look at it, it looks like the word circle. So we can automatically associate it with goes in a circle because it's circumduction, which looks like a circle. And when I talk about associations and how you can associate with a term with the answer, I'm talking about in regards to me and how I associate the term with the answer. So this is just based on my preference and how I associate terms. Vocab, what is flexion? So flexion means to flex. And I know I said don't ever use the word in the definition, but in this regard, it's the best way to describe it. Flexion is like when you flex your bicep and you have big biceps and you're going to flex your biceps, you're flexing, you're tightening that up, which is flexion. Okay, so let's move on to question 18. Question 18. What name is associated to the section labeled B? So B is on the left side of the body and it is in the upper quadrant. So this is the left upper quadrant, which is so easy. Quadrants are very easy to name. It literally is their location. Regions are more complicated because they have associated names. Well, very specific associated names. So let's move on to question 18. Vocab, extension. So what is extension? Extension means to extend out. So once you flex, you gotta extend back out. Extension and flexion, extension and flexion. Flexion, you're gonna extend back out. Flexion, you're gonna flex. Okay. What anatomical direction is number 5 pictured below? So number 5, we have an arrow pointing all the way down to the feet. So from the head to the feet, that's the direction that we're going. And that is going to be known as inferior. We're going from the head to the feet. Anything that's going towards the feet, towards the bottom of the organism. Abduction is when you put something away from the body. So when you're abducting, you're not adding, you're abducting. You're putting it away from the body. Once you adduct, you have to abduct. Adduct, abduct. Question 22. Supination. So when I think about supination in terms of how I associate the terms, I always think about supination and superhero. Superheroes fly to the sky. Next question. Inversion is when souls are, so inversion, in. That's why I associate the terms. Inversion is inwards. So let's move on to the next question. Another name for the head is known as the cranial. This is because the cranial holds your brain. So you know your head, it holds your brain, so your cranial holds your brain as well. Pronation is when the palms of the hands are to the planet. So when I think about pronation, I always associate P with planet. Planet. So let's go on to the next question. The layman name for the axillary is armpit. This was a concept that was kind of hard for me to learn. So how I associated axillary with armpit was always that, first of all, they both start with A, and I associate the term axillary like an aux. You plug in aux, and it gives you can play music and import things, and it's like an extra piece that connects things. And the armpit is something that someone doesn't really think about necessarily when they think about concepts and how the body functions, but the armpit is very important. It performs a very crucial amount of functions. Another name for the neck is, and how I associate this is you have cervical vertebrae in your neck. Your cervical is your neck. So, okay, let's move on to the next question. Eversion is when souls are. So eversion is the opposite of inversion. So inversion is going in, eversion is going out. So for this question, what name is associated with the fifth region in this photo? So we know that the fifth region is right in the middle, and this region is also where the umbilical cord would be as a baby, which would also be where your belly button is, and that is your umbilical region. Another name for the chest is, so when you think about the chest and you're thinking about body cavities, you might associate it with thoracic. The thoracic is another word for, well, it's anatomical terms for the chest. Number 31. Another name for the belly button is, so the belly button is also called the umbilical. The belly button is where your umbilical cord is going to attach. That's how I associate the two terms together. Excuse me, I have hiccups. Another name for the lower back is, so we have talked about this when we're talking about regions of the body. Your lower back is also called your lumbar because I always associate it like when you if you've ever been pregnant before, you get these pregnancy pillows and they're lumbar support. They support your lower back while you breastfeed. That's why I always associate those two terms. So, true or false? The plane in blue represents the sagittal plane. So the plane in blue is separating this organism on left and right halves, and that's true. The sagittal plane separates an organism or an object into left and right equal halves. You could get more specific and say mid-sagittal. There's all different types of terms, but in this term they were just saying sagittal plane, and that in regards to that is correct. Another name for the buttocks is, have you ever heard of the gluteus maximus or the gluteus medius? It's always gluteal. Next question. Another name for the groin. I had a hard time of distinguishing like how to associate these two terms because they're so different. But I always know that it's inguinal. I always associate groin and inguinal. I just got used to associating the two terms. Inguinal is just an awkward word, and when you talk about your groin, it's an awkward conversation. So that's how I kind of associate the two terms. The layman name for the brachial is your upper arm. So when you're going in terms of from your upper arm to your fingertips, there's a very specific way, and we'll get into that in the following slides. But for now, the brachial is your upper arm. That's going to be from where your shoulder connects down to maybe about above your elbow. It's going to be your upper arm. So the layman name for the antebrachial is um, the forearm, because after your brachial, you have the antebrachial, and your antebrachial is going to be your forearm. Next question. The layman name for the carpal is. So in layman terms, which layman just means in terms you would use talking to individuals and not exactly anatomical terminology. In that regard, it's going to be your wrist, because I associate carpal with carpal tunnel. My name is carpal tunnel, so your wrist. So let's go to the next question. Another name for the palm is palmar. This one's super simple. I didn't have to come up with an association. It's very common sense. Palmar and palm. Let's go to the next question. Another name for the thigh is. So when I think about the thigh, I think about the femur. The femur is the bone of the thigh, and I associate the two terms. And the femur is actually very strong, and it's actually pretty crazy because when you're thinking about older people and they fall and break their hip, it actually is associated that maybe their femoral or their hip breaks, and that's what causes them to fall. So let's go ahead and move on to the next question.